Next, reforming welfare. President Bush said in his State of the Union speech, welfare was never meant to be a lifestyle. In California, where welfare payments are among the highest in the nation, Republican Governor Pete Wilson agrees. He wants the voters to decide how to cut back. Peter Grauman of public station KQED, San Francisco, reports.
For generations, people around the world have looked on California as a golden place of opportunity. During the Great Depression, Dust Bowl refugees came west by the thousand until policemen were posted at the border to turn away those arriving with no money.
Back to the border go wanderers barred from the promised land in what is said to be the first state blockade of its kind ever attempted.
Even though California's economy is in worse shape today than any time since the 30s, its golden aura continues to attract people. Enough of them end up on welfare to threaten the state's future, according to Governor Pete Wilson. Since the state can no longer close its borders, the governor wants it to cut welfare benefits.
Welfare costs are growing at the rate of almost 12% a year. That's 4 times the rate of even California's relentless population increase, and we grow annually by the population of Delaware. 7% of California's present welfare recipients did not live in this state a year ago.
The governor is pushing a measure called the Taxpayers Protection Act. California's initiative process gives the Republican governor the chance to bypass the state legislature, controlled by Democrats, to appeal directly to the voters in a referendum on next November's ballot. The governor is pitching his initiative to middle-class voters like Pam and Rob Arno. The Arnos helped elect Wilson 2 years ago. They felt betrayed when he raised taxes last year to solve a budget crisis.
The state has to start saying we need business to succeed. We don't need business to be here so we can tax them into the dirt.
Which you feel like is happening?
Well, that's where they go when they need money. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, gee, guys, we're spending too much money, maybe we should cut back.
Rob Arno is a painting contractor. Pam is schooling their children at home and expecting their 3rd child in the spring. This family takes pride in living within its means. Both Pam and Rob believe that the welfare system is doing the opposite, spending too much and conditioning people to depend on handouts.
I really struggle with someone that is my caliber. I mean, I'm healthy, I'm 37 years old, I can produce. He should produce. And if he does not want to produce, he should go hungry. That sounds real evil. But I've always believed that. I believed that when I was a kid. But see, that happened because my father taught me that.
Right. How many of such people do you think are on the welfare system?
That are doing that are sucking the system, there's probably, I'd say, maybe 20% of fraud.
The Taxpayer Protection Act targets the AFDC program, Aid to Families with Dependent Children, which currently consumes 6% of the state budget and supports 700,000 families like Sarah Houston and her daughter Dana. How long have you been on AFDC?
Off and on for 17 years.
How come? Why have you been on it so long?
Because I will get a job and I would start working, and it's like I would make so much, and it just wasn't enough for me to live on with the cuts and the deductions that they take away from working.
For a 10-year-old, Dana has a disturbingly clear understanding of the welfare system.
It's money that other people give to the other people that need it.
And the people who are giving that money to the people who need it, do they like to give that money?
They have to, I think.
And the people who receive the welfare, is there any shame in that in your mind?
No.
This system today traps people. It is, for that reason, corrosive and demoralizing. So I say, let's lift the barriers that are keeping people down who don't want to be dependent. Let's allow them to lift themselves and lift California to greater heights.
The Taxpayer Protection Act would reduce the grant for a family of 3 by 25%, from $663 a month to $507, unless the head of the household is disabled. The cuts would move California from paying the 5th highest benefits of any state down to 14th place. It's supposed to reduce the so-called magnet effect, which draws needy people from lower-paying states.
And you know, we pay three and a half times what Texas pays in terms of the cash grant, double what Arizona pays. So another thing the initiative will do is to say to those who have just moved to California, those who are seeking welfare, that they will receive for 1 year a grant equal to that paid by the state from which they have moved. And it's time to end the insidious incentive that we are giving to single mothers, especially teenage girls, to continue having children out of wedlock. So our initiative sets a maximum family grant so that there will not be an effort continuing to encourage more children simply to increase the grant.
It's no surprise that welfare recipients hate the initiative. Several hundred came out in the rain to protest at the Capitol. Welfare activists are planning to campaign against the measure by challenging the governor's facts. Casey McKeever is an attorney with the Western Poverty Law Center.
The average number of kids in an AFDC household is 2. 90% of the AFDC households have 3 or fewer children. So I think it is grossly false to suggest that AFDC families have children for the purpose of getting more AFDC benefits.
McKeever also doubts the so-called magnet effect even exists to any degree.
People do tend to move to California, but I don't think that welfare is a major factor. People move because they know people here, they have family or friends, there may be some potential job opportunities. Migration patterns have tended to follow job opportunities, in fact, in the last 20 years or so, more away from higher benefit northeastern states into Sunbelt states where, in fact, benefits generally tended to be lower.
Social workers at Travelers Aid say their experience supports the view that AFDC families are overwhelmingly longtime Californians, and that the growing welfare caseload reflects hard times, not immigration. They cite the evolution of Travelers Aid itself as evidence. The agency has changed from a group that helped travelers locate lost luggage to a resource center for the homeless. Liz Resner is executive director for Northern California.
The myth is that people come here because the benefits are good. On a family of 4 getting benefits of $663 when the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $800 or $900, that's not a bargain. I mean, why would that be a reason to come? Most of the families can't make it.
Resner cites the Houstons as typical clients, a local family who needed help to find a place to live.
The cost of living here in San Francisco is just totally outrageous. With the money that I get per month on AFDC, is it not even enough to even have a room in one of the rundown hotels here?
What would happen? Would a 25% cut in your AFDC get you off welfare?
I wouldn't say that it would or it wouldn't. I just wouldn't be able to survive with it or without it.
It was the night before Christmas, and all through the state, families were starving, no food on their plate.
Having unveiled his initiative shortly before Christmas, Governor Wilson anticipated he'd be called a Scrooge. He also predicted that liberals would link him to David Duke. Willie Brown, the state's Democratic Assembly leader, willingly obliges.
There is no difference in their position, in their opinion, on the issue.
Of
period.
welfare?
Of welfare. There's absolutely no difference in their position, in their opinion on the issue. As a matter of fact, I think David Duke may demonstrably be doing a little bit less saber rattling than the governor on the issue.
I had to tip my hat to Wilson for one reason, that he's come up with this thing, because most of the Republicans are embarrassed, afraid, and are backpedaling big time with Duke. They don't know, they don't want to associate and say anything that guy said because where he's coming from. Mm-hmm. Now, the guy is, in my opinion, sick, But sick people sometimes say some things that may need to be addressed.
Politically, I think it's a very, very strong thing. I think people, even the Democrats, concede it's kind of a master stroke.
Dan Walters, a columnist for the Sacramento Bee and the dean of the state's political writers, says he doesn't see the Taxpayer Protection Act having the national impact that the Proposition 13 property tax revolt had in the late 70s. But he does think it's a shoo-in.
The brutal facts are that welfare recipients don't vote, and middle-class homeowners do vote, and that's the constituency he's trying to appeal to. That's the constituency he wants to pull away from the Democrats as much as he can. And I think it's in a year when Republican prospects don't look particularly good otherwise because of the economy, it's a very clever stratagem.
The anticipated popularity of welfare reform is sufficient to persuade some Democrats seeking office to jump on the bandwagon. Lieutenant Governor Leo McCarthy, who's running for the party's U.S. Senate nomination, has echoed the call for a one-year cap on welfare benefits for newcomers.
Let's just set the payment equal to the national average of all the states. That's about $383 as compared to California's $663. And let's put in an exemption for someone who moves to California because of the failing health of an immediate family member who lives here.
Having yet to hear any debate on the governor's initiative, Rob and Pam Arno are inclined to vote for it.
From what I know right now, I like the sound of it. I agree with it at face value.
Our state is filled with these people on welfare that are dying. They may not be in a box buried, but their whole life, their whole heritage for their children is death. It doesn't make any sense, and yet we have to struggle. You know, we're expected, because we're middle class, to make our payment and to you know, have kids that are going to be, you know, substantial in later life, and yet these people are like, well, we don't know what to do with them, so we'll just give them some money and maybe they'll go away.
California voters rejected a previous welfare cutting initiative back in 1984. But that measure wasn't spearheaded by an ambitious governor and wasn't presented in the midst of an economic recession that is squeezing middle-class taxpayers as never before.